Hello, lovely people. Welcome to the Visual Studio Code live stream. Today is going to be another fun one. My name is Liam Hampton. I'm a senior cloud advocate here at Microsoft, and I am joined today with Sarah Kaiser. So, Sarah, come on up. Hey, how are you doing?
Hey, everybody. How's it going?
It's great to have you here. So, you're on the Python team, the Python advocacy team, right?
That's right. I've been using
Tell us a little bit
Python.
about what you do.
Yeah, so I've been using Python for kind of scientific research, academic, industrial, basically anything to make things in your lab work for over 15 years, I guess. But yeah, it's one of my favorite go-to tools, and I really love finding ways to use Python to not only like automate and make my lab function, but also use it to work on my data and find ways to kind of share my results. So I'm a big fan of Jupyter Notebooks, and that's kind of what we're going to be looking at today.
Super cool. Yeah, no, I'm a Go engineer and I'm new to Python, so I am all ears for this one. I've been using Python a little bit now for a lot of personal projects, so anything Python based, I'm jumping on, I'm trying to get involved in. So today you're going to be talking about data science notebooks with AI agents. So let's do a little bit of what's this about? Like, can you tell us a little bit around this?
Yeah, so a lot of folks already like working in Jupyter Notebooks, myself included, but they are kind of slightly a different beast from just like writing Python scripts. And so understanding kind of like how can you leverage agents in notebooks, around notebooks, to create notebooks. Basically, if you have kind of a notebook-focused workflow, where are the points where you can actually integrate either Copilot or Copilot agents in that workflow to save you time, effort, and hopefully catch mistakes.
Super cool. Super cool. Yeah, Jupyter Notebooks. I haven't played with it much, but I play with it enough to notice like the cells, and you click the buttons and it runs a bit of code, and it's pretty awesome. I like doing that. That's a great way to learn. So, all right, folks, we're not going to spend too much time talking about this. If you have any questions, throw them in the chat. Sarah and myself I'll jump up and ask Sarah the questions, and Sarah, I think you can also see them as well. So just hop on them. We'll try and answer them as best we can. Be nice, be kind, and let's have some fun. I'm going to drop off the stage now, and I'm going to hand it over to you, Sarah. Away we go. You've got about 45 minutes to an hour.
Perfect. Cool. Well, I figured today the most interesting, fun thing we could do is actually just go through like we were going to start a new data science project and actually do the things in real life in our editor as we're going here. So one of the big things I could say about working with some of the agent mode features with notebooks is it's probably going to be most helpful if you're in VS Code Insiders. So that's why you'll see the little green VS Code icon in the top left. So I have, kind of like a lot of my projects have started with, somebody gives me some data. whether it's my instruments or I'm working with a colleague, this is something they collected. So this is, and also because a lot of times things are not, I don't have a wonderful database or something like that. I've just got kind of a crappy CSV text file with all kinds of like really inconsistent missing values. Like, okay, it doesn't look, we could obviously browse it like this, but it's not exactly an agent, but it allows you to use agents in it, an extension in VS Code that I highly, highly recommend. Okay, you can see I was finding a appropriate theme for today since it's into the spooky season. We got some Dracula here. But yeah, Data Wrangler is a great place. So, you've got your data. It's time to start kind of just even seeing what's in the file. So this is a great extension that allows us to do something like this. So if I have my CSV data, oftentimes, like if you have markdown files, there's like a little preview button up here in the corner. Here we kind of have now a data preview button. I'm going to close this for the moment. So Data Wrangler uses basically a Python kernel in the background. And what it can do is actually help you edit, do data cleaning, but in a way that is kind of very intuitive and visual, almost kind of like an Excel-like experience, but not quite, because it really is using pandas on the background. So I was connected to kernels earlier. Let's see. Well, while that's thinking, let's take a look at some other stuff here. And if I need to reload my window, I will. One of the fun parts about working on the bleeding edge is sometimes things take a minute. Anyway, so other than if we were to go through and manually browse some of the stuff with Data Wrangler, okay, I have gotten that timeout error a few times. Let me just try. I think I was narrowing down what the bug was. Let's see if just reloading the window helps. What we really kind of want to talk about today is the agent stuff. So if we'll just close all of that. So how many folks have played around with agents in VS Code before? You can put a thumbs up or something in chat, or your favorite emoji. Oh, you're right in my way. Okay. I will open this as one of the things I've discovered recently with Copilot and VS Code, just like a pro tip, you can open the side panel as an actual editor window, which is actually super helpful. Okay, so we've got our data. I need to start this project. And, I've, as I'm sure a lot of folks here have, started projects many, many times, probably even made templates or cookie cutters or used all kinds of, ways to try and shortcut that starting the project process. So I'm going to show you another way that you can kind of using agents kind of make that startup process faster. So I'm going to start by, this is my prompt window with GitHub Copilot here in VS Code. You have different modes that you can use Copilot in. Since we're talking about agents today, I'm definitely going to select agent there. And that really all that means is that we're actually going to be able to interact, like our Copilot's going to be able to interact with VS Code directly. So do things like edit files, create things, add things to our Python kernel. So some pretty helpful things. So I'm going to add to context our data file because that's the data we want to talk about. Notice my directory here, I wanted to make sure that it was Literally, we just have the data. There's nothing else Copilot can look at for help. So we just have the data. And I want to say something like, can you help me start analyzing this data in Jupyter Notebook with visualization? So that's obviously a pretty generic sort of question. I'm making it a pretty vague request. So let's see what it can do to help us. So while that is thinking, I'll show you a few more things that I've kind of learned in the process of doing a lot of testing, working with Copilot and agents and stuff here. You can always take a look at your previous chats, which, especially when I'm transitioning from, starting my project to maybe doing the next phase where I do some more detailed analysis, then I usually tend to start a new chat just because the longer it goes, that's a lot more tokens for context that then can mean, maybe it's harder for it to kind of stay focused on what I'm asking of it. And also, you can always, did I hide it? Nope. If you ever need to get, if you're kind of wondering what's going on, like myself, I always like understanding what's going on under the hood. You can actually look at the chat debug log over here. And so you can see each individual prompt, what's the metadata being sent with it. So let's take a look here. It looks like Copilot's waiting for our input. So it created to-dos, which I actually really like this feature. Usually if you ask Copilot to do kind of a longer task, especially with agents, it kind of makes a little checklist for itself. And you can even like check things off if it like doesn't realize it's finished it, or uncheck them. So it's created a notebook for us. It actually also made a README, which is kind of nice. And we'll talk about in a minute how we can kind of customize all of the stuff that it's doing here. So it wants to write a Python snippet here, like just a Python script snippet, I think, to check that our import path works. That could be reasonable. And you can see here, like it's waiting on our permission to run code, which is, I think, one of the most important things here. Like, having an agent that can just go do things in our editor feels a little bit spicy to me. So the fact that every time it wants to do something, or you can allow in a particular session or workspace, you have control over that. But here, I don't really care about that. Like, I'm not concerned about like whether it's the encoding is correct or something like that. So we can also keep an eye on, there's a little kind of expand details here where we can actually also see what files it's working on at any stage. And I've been using GPT-5 Mini here mainly because it's the new hotness, but and I've found that it actually tends to do a fairly nice kind of when it gets to the end of where it thinks, like where it wants to stop and ask you for input again, it does kind of a really nice summary section that also says why and gives you like, how do you run it, options for next steps. Here it says it didn't run the cells in the notebook, which is fine. So let's take a look at the files it actually created. I'm going to close that or unexpand that. So if we look at the README, it kind of gives us a little manifest, notes, something about how it's doing parsing, which is cool, because I think it's also automatically parsed some pretty frustrating columns, frustratingly formatted columns. So I'll say, let's keep that. I'm pretty happy with that. And let's look at the Jupyter Notebook. Okay, you know, the chunks that I always copy and paste between every notebook. Yeah, like all of these seem pretty reasonable. We're using data frames, it makes some visualizations. So we'll say, yep, that looks, you know, I don't see any exfiltration code or anything in there. So that all looks good. So the next thing, like it makes some suggestions. I'm just going to say, I was just double checking what kernel the notebook is tied to. So I'm actually in a dev container right now. And if you are interested in any of this code, there is actually a GitHub repo that has kind of both the data set I'm working with, as well as a self-paced workshop that you can go through and try out all of this stuff yourself. And yes, you can absolutely use Miniconda in VS Code. That's actually usually my preferred Miniconda or Mamba. Mamba being a slightly faster rewrite of some of the package dependency logic. Also try out UV. That's as UV is written in Rust, so that's even faster. But yeah, I'll put the link to this in chat, or maybe okay, thank you. Our lovely studio folks have put that in chat. Okay, so let's come back to our analysis here. And I'm going to go to Copilot. As it's an agent, like if I was just talking to a chatbot couldn't run my cell code, but like the code in my cells for me. But this is an agent, so I'm talking to an agent. Can you run the notebook? Maybe I'm in a meeting or something and I don't, I want this to just kind of go through and handle things for a little bit. And run the main cells in order. Okay. Because I'm expecting it to also, yeah, okay. So as we were talking about before, it does, I mean, if we just allowed each one individually, it would ask us for each cell to allow it to run it. I'm going to say allow in this section, so it doesn't have to keep asking me. But it's nice you kind of have that granularity. So if I pop over here, looks like at least the first couple are working out here. I'm still going to check back and see if I can get, is it just having a little, finding Python interpreters is still probably one of the hardest. Python interpreters and packages are the hardest problems in Python, IMHO. So we'll come back to the notebook. Okay. So it's run into an issue. I'm going to close a few of these for us. I don't need this because I want to see what it's doing. So if I come back to our chat, let's look at what it's doing here. I would like you to go away because I need to see behind here. Okay, there we go. Okay, so it looks like as it was going through and running the cells, it found things basically it wanted to edit. So it's come up with, not only did it run my cells, but it fixed, you know, kind of the issues that arose, you know, given this is the first time you're running the cells, you know, what's the likelihood that either myself or Copilot writes code correctly the first time? Not super high. So yeah, this was really great. I didn't have to like tell it how to fix things. So it even says here, gives us a summary of the things it fixed. So it fixed a CSV reading bug because of something about how lines start, added defensive checks before converting columns, and then executed things in order. So let's actually, it ran it, it looks like, and then also proposed the changes. So one thing I can kind of show here, do I dare try it again? You'll notice if you've used Jupyter Notebooks before, the preview for, so like, it's pretty common, you know, you're going through, you have your data frame, maybe you do something, maybe you're cool, and you've used the Jupyter variables feature before, which is kind of like PyCharm has this, Spider has this, but basically gives you a way to see what variables are currently in memory and allows you to just like literally look at what they are. Interesting. Now it, okay, so maybe data wrangler work now since it sees a kernel from here. So yeah, you can look at variables in your notebook that way, but normally like my notebooks would be littered with like here df.head, which is saying, all right, for where I'm storing my data in this pandas data frame, give me the first 5, 10, whatever rows. And so then you'd like manually inspect it, but you wouldn't get a nice browsable sort of view like this. And you certainly couldn't like page through it. It would just be like if you printed it. So I find, so even if you don't use Data Wrangler for anything else, I think this is a huge win. And let's see if we can open this data frame in Data Wrangler. Okay, cool. Now I can actually show you a little bit what this looks like. I am not quite sure why I was having trouble with detecting the kernel separately for the CSV file. It worked this morning. Okay, so you kind of see here, I've got 80 rows and 41 columns. Oh, and I think I didn't say this data, the file is called fish, but it's actually, I really like playing Animal Crossing. So this is actually a dump from kind of the data files about the fish that you can go fishing in the video game. And these are all the different fish you can catch, but there is lots of kind of hidden parameters that aren't really shown to you in the game. So I was really curious about what does it actually have access to make decisions about when fish spawn or when you can catch them. So when I said earlier that this data was kind of messy, and what I mean by that is it has time ranges when you can catch the different fish. Some of them are available in the morning, afternoon, whatever. But also it changes month by month. And also there are 2 different hemispheres. So basically the way it was stored in this file was a column for every month of the Northern Hemisphere, a column for every month of the Southern Hemisphere, and then text strings with basically what are 3 different settings, time ranges, all day, like afternoon, night, and morning, day. So that would just be really messy to work with. So that's the sort of thing of like, yeah, I can go back and try and remember all of the Pandas API options, or this is a great thing for Copilot to help me with. I see there's a question in chat. Copilot agent, sometimes it behaves differently and just doesn't see some projects in the solution and then creates new things. Reload Copilot. Ah, okay. So yeah, something, I'll show you a couple things that might be helpful. So one thing that I generally try and do when I'm working with Copilot, especially, I mean, if I'm just asking something generally about, you know, if I have all the folders, I've added everything to my workspace over here, which sounds like that's kind of what you have. You can do something, you can see how here in kind of ghost text, it says add context, extensions, and commands. If you use the, I think it's at, yeah, so at workspace, that should tell Copilot that basically what I'm interested in is looking at my entire workspace that I have open. So even if I have multiple different file directories and stuff, this should basically help kind of frame your prompt in terms of the context of the whole workspace. Sometimes I'm paranoid, and sometimes my workspace is so large that I don't exactly want it to load everything because it might get real slow, or use tokens, especially if I'm using a model where it costs money. Right now, the GPT-5 mini I'm using right now is one of the kind of like free tier ones. So I'm not using any sort of really super powered Copilot here. But yeah, I'm often kind of paranoid about this. So I will, as you saw before, explicitly add, if there's a solution file, it sounds like you might be working in C#, ? But yeah, I would, if there are things it's missing, you ask a question, it seems to miss something, I would potentially reply with, hey, I'm also interested in this, or you missed this. Can you update your analysis or what you're working with? So that would be my suggestion. Yes, the C# solution. I did use Visual Studio for a while. Let's just say I really like VS Code. It's very good. It's very good at what it does, but I'm mostly a Python developer, so code is kind of my jam. Awesome. So let's come back to, we're looking at Data Wrangler here. So I can briefly show you a little bit about what makes it kind of awesome. I'm just going to reopen it because I think I lost my side column here. Okay. So you can see by default, it generates these kind of previews also at the top of columns. So we were looking at kind of some of the gross, the really unhelpful columns over here, but you can see it gives you summaries of values, tells you how many are missing or distinct, all kinds of good stuff like that. But what you can do is like either directly at the column. So like, this is telling us this is an object type. Spawn rates probably should be in, well, no, that should probably be a range object, given that. Okay, here's a better example. This is definitely an enum, or should be something like that, because it's just a list of sizes. They don't need to be objects. So you could do things like, let's see, if I select the column here, it shows me the summary statistics. I don't want to filter or sort. Oh, right. So I'm viewing it right now, which is obviously why it's not giving me any options to change things, which kind of makes sense because it is a data frame loaded in my Python kernel right now. I don't want it to open in edit mode by default. What I was looking for, though, is you can see here, now my sidebar has things like operations, data summary, and cleaning steps. So I could go through here and, if I happen to know exactly what I want, I could have it split, or, just like literally whatever sort of anything in the Python or in the Pandas API you might want. Let's see, maybe I want this column format, convert text to lowercase. It was the where, how column. Would have guessed it, would have gotten it. Sure, we'll lowercase the names one. So, no, that's already lowercase. Capitalize name, cool. And we'll capitalize all words. So what you'll see here is it shows you a preview. And so, kind of like if you were doing git diffs, you can check and say, yes, apply that operation. And then in your cleaning steps, that will actually be listed as a cleaning step. So if you, like, if I was entirely new to this data and I was literally just trying to kind of triage, before I set up any sort of pipelines or anything fancy, and just wanted to, manual, I see, this should be something else, or, we need to map the numbers to names somewhere. Those are things you could do. Now, if you want to talk to an agent while you're working on this, you can kind of working in Data Wrangler. Data Wrangler is your agent because you have this option here to just literally directly talk, and it will write the code to do whatever you're asking for the cleaning purposes. And what's cool is when you're done, doing all the making your data look nice, you can export it to a fresh notebook. You can copy all of the steps because it's keeping track of what you do. It'll turn that all into Python pandas code and give you a little blob that you can copy and paste at the beginning of your notebook to use like in the future if you get lots of kind of data of the same format. So I want to show one. We're gonna have Copilot here help us out in the Data Wrangler. There is a column here. Yeah, so this was one that I really didn't was frustrated by because it's basically, it is effectively a Boolean column here because it's no's or yeses. There's no missing values, but it's considering that column an object column. So I'm going to say, can you make the rain snow catch up on a bool type with no as false. I have tried it without specifically saying the mapping. Sometimes it gets it, sometimes it doesn't. So I just wanted to be a little more explicit here. So like in other places where we're working with agents, it does ask us before it just goes off running code. It shows me literally the one-liner here that it wants to run. I'm cool with that. So let's take a look now. Now we see that, partly by the icon here, that this column is now a Boolean column. It has true and false, and so that'll parse a lot nicer in any subsequent code that we're working with this data. So yeah, I'm not going to save that though because we currently have it being edited. But if I were to, let's say yes, and let's say copy all as code, I just want to actually see that. Yep, so it wrote it, and it actually even put some comments in there for us. So definitely, if you have to work with a lot of raw data or things like that, give Data Wrangler a little check it out. So this is back to the code that we asked. So we asked the agent to run our notebook. Then it found some errors. It fixed them automatically. So I'm going to say, can you run it again? Again. But I'm going to just scroll down here and look at the visualizations it made. All right, I'm going to also unzoom us just a little bit here. Nope. Thought I knew how to unzoom. There we go. Cool. If I scroll down, okay, so yep, we got a couple plots here to show us some things. Ooh, that's kind of nice. Oh, this is actually a really helpful visualization. If I want to make money, where should I go fishing such that the sell value of the fish kind of is the highest. So I guess the highest average would be the cliff tops of rivers. But interesting. So yeah, like also one of the cool things about exploratory data analysis, sometimes asking a big question will get you things that you don't expect, which is honestly something that, so now I could go and refine that visualization. So it looks like it ran everything, and it actually looks like that first round of fixing everything did work. So that's great. I going through and fixing like plotting errors or whatever is definitely not high on my having fun list. Okay, so now that we've got our notebook, we're working around. So yeah, also there might be, are there some folks here in chat who are new to Jupyter Notebooks? I don't know. Tell me in chat. Maybe you all are notebook pros. I don't know, but the basic the basic concept here is just basically it's a way to have your comments and your code kind of both nicely formatted in kind of little chunks in the same document. So the whole reason I fell in love with them was because I could put, I have a physics PhD, I could actually put my formulas and my comment like in the markdown cells, because these are just markdown cells that support LaTeX math. So you can write directly comments, and kind of your code document then really functions as something that is, I don't know, to me, you don't have to kind of go back and forth between some sort of documentation and your code and kind of correlate it all. You can have it all together. I think it's a lot more common to use them kind of at the beginning side of projects, because usually as a project matures, you end up taking, you know, kind of what you've, sometimes I just have really big notebooks with a bunch of scratch code and stuff like that. And then eventually you want to kind of migrate it to maybe something that like an actual script that you can put in a pipeline or something like that. But it's, like it says by the name, a notebook, and is somewhere where you can kind of just do scratch work. Some people actually do put notebooks in prod, which I think is also kind of cool. So these visualizations are good, but if I were to be going to, I don't know, put these in a presentation or something like that, I would probably, they're pretty, they may not look like it on your screen, but at least on my screen, they are kind of grainy, low res. I'm just trying to decide what else I might want to change about them. Let's try this one. So you have, and that's the other thing actually about notebooks, is you actually get to see the output. Like this doesn't generate necessarily an image separately somewhere in a file that you have to go look at to see your results, like if you just ran a Python script. So you see it all here in line. The VS Code Notebooks extension, or just using Jupyter Notebooks in VS Code, gives you a couple options that are super helpful when you have these, like when you have an image or something. You can save it directly if you want. You can expand and view it kind of just as its own little window, or you can copy it. You know, if I was just doing like a weekly update sort of slideshow or something like that, I would, you know, probably copy it, put it in my presentation. But I don't know if I would copy this one because it's kind of low res. So I can do something either by clicking on the triple dots over here in the gutter and say, add cell output to chat. Or I can literally just grab the image and drag it over to my Copilot chat. And I can say something like, can you increase the DPI, or the dots per inch, for resolution on this image and make it a dark theme? Because maybe the rest of my presentation for a talk coming up is, I want to have a black background. So it's going to think about that. while that's thinking, because I'm looking at the time that we have left, I want to show you, I'm going to pop over to, so this is a window where I literally have workshop that we shared the link for earlier, and maybe it can pop up again. This is literally the repo for the workshop. And I have a couple things in here that I think I found super helpful and are kind of interesting to play around with. So, you know, here where you go to select whether it's an agent or ask mode, you can actually, there'll be a configure modes option, and you can actually create your own agent modes. So this isn't necessarily as, it's not like you're kind of like customizing the inputs and tools an agent has available. Because actually, as we found, or like the community has kind of collectively found, agents that have a lot of options for what they can do, generally, the more options kind of decreases the likelihood that they might find the tool that they're looking for. So you can actually, when you're working with agents in VS Code, close that. Let's make this a little bit bigger. So in our Copilot prompt window here, you can see there's literally a little tool icon, configure tools. Oh yeah, I want to go back to just raw agent mode. Yeah, so this actually shows you all the tools it has access to right now, which is almost 60 tools. That's fine, but you know, there's some in here like, you know, if I'm working with Jupyter Notebooks, I don't need the testing features in VS Code, and I don't need it to necessarily know about running tests or whether tests fail. And extensions you have installed can also, extensions and MCP servers that you have installed. So something cool I learned the other day was if you look at the extensions, stop button mashing. If you look at your extension store on VS Code, there's actually a section for MCP servers if you want to try out some of that stuff. I am just getting into learning about some of this. I want to actually interact. I run a Home Assistant at home, and they have an MCP server, so I'm going to give that a go. But yeah, so extensions, MCP servers, and VS Code itself expose all these tools. But especially for some of the data science tasks we're doing, we really don't need all of those. So if I wanted to create, let's take a look. So when you go to configure modes, it'll create a new file for you. You can either choose to have it directly in your project or as part of your user profile. But I'm going to show you one that I made before. And so, yeah, it's called DS Create. So create a data science project. We've got a description. And here it actually has, I'm just explicitly kind of allow listing what tools I wanted to have access to. So things about configuring the notebook, installing packages, stuff like that. And I explicitly give a model here. You can definitely use these custom agent modes with different models, but I find kind of the more I use it and tweak the rest of the kind of prompt context here, the more I'm specializing it to a specific model. So that's why like I'm okay with committing that this, you know, maybe you have a different chat mode for different models that you work with, or like a different agent mode. I think the chat mode name is from before when there wasn't agent stuff. But yeah, so like what the rest of this file is kind of like a custom prompt instruction file. So it's basically another place you can kind of add, rather than having to type all of this every time you ask the agent to do stuff. The agent is told all of this and then, you know, kind of adds that to what it's thinking about. Well, it's, you know, doing what you've asked it to do. So I actually wrote this. Copilot is also very helpful with writing the prompt text here. So I am explicit about kind of I want documentation. When we're working with this agent mode, we want it to create a requirements.txt. I'm all about reproducible science, so I want to make it easier. If I've made that notebook, I want to have a way to recreate that environment if I pass that off to somebody else. I give explicit notebook sections that I want it to have, and some other best practice sorts of things as well. So let's give that, I want to do a quick example of like kind of showing you using that mode. And I'll shoot, one of the other modes I also made was a analysis mode. So, you have your data, maybe you are, maybe you're a financial analyst who kind of does the same type of analysis repeatedly. Maybe you do some sort of statistical analysis of outliers or things like that. What you could do is create a agent mode for that kind of type of analysis where basically, so I made one here for working with some of the categorical data in that Animal Crossing data set. And so again, I kind of tell it the persona. I say what statistical methods, because especially if you just say something like, help me analyze this data, sometimes the statistics or the particular functions and Python packages it chooses are not the best. So here, by putting the agent in this mode, it allows us to kind of better direct and effectively give it options such that it's more likely to do things we are interested in. So here, like I itemized statistical methods that I'd like it to use. I've itemized what type of machine learning tools or techniques I want it to use. And I have importance notes here for it to actually explain its choices when it's picking different things here. So once you had your data all clean and stuff like that, you could actually use this agent mode to kind of repeat it reproducibly, not necessarily the results, but you could have the same input each time via this agent mode. So honestly, I think those agent modes are kind of one of the coolest things to play around with and customize right now. So let's actually, I'm going to open our, let's take a look. I don't know. Let's look at fossils this time. I have in the workshop all of the different kind of like data categories from the game. Okay, so again, a CSV file. By having it open, it automatically adds it to our Copilot context here. And I'm going to make sure we're in our agent mode here for DS Create. So I'm just going to say, and oops, start analyzing this data. I mean, again, I'm trying to keep it pretty general. I'm not trying to be super detailed with my prompt at this point. Most of the instructions I want to provide it are in that agent mode, like description. So while it's doing that, I want to show you one more thing. And come back to our other kind of bare bones project here. And it looks like, yeah, we asked it before to edit the code here, I think, to change the resolution. I may have, by disappearing, not quite sure where I changed it, but let's see, what do we want to do? Okay. One other place you can, mostly we've been interacting with agents here on, in the Copilot chat window, which is awesome, but that takes up a lot of screen real estate. And, sometimes I'm just vibing here in my notebook. You can either like if you want to make a new cell, if you click generate, it gives you basically a cell with a Copilot prompt in it. And as far as I understand, this is an agent. You can choose the model, but it does basically, you have agent mode inline options here. So like, for example, if I was just looking here, I could either open, right click here and open inline chat, or as we see there, it should be Control I. Yep. I can say, can you change this to a dark green? Or I'm going to say, just because there are a lot of things in the cell, the histogram to a dark theme. And then let's see what it does. In the meantime, we'll come back here. So it started our new project. Let's see, it's made 5 files. Okay, sometimes it's very overeager. So you can see what it's done here is actually, we've got our notebook, we've got our README and requirements. Those were things I specifically asked for in the agent mode. It has tried to go above and beyond and provide a Python script for cleaning the data and a testing file for that cleaning script. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. For my context here, that's kind of overkill, but if we look at where it's at, it actually wants to run the unit tests here, which would require it to run a bash command. And so again, because it's actually going to do something on my machine, it asks for my permission. So I will say, oh, I do not. I will run that once. And we'll see if that helps unblock it. I'm also, when I run into situations like this where it's not something I necessarily care about, I'm also pretty happy to say skip and it will just continue. Yeah, I don't. I'm gonna say pause just because I don't want it to keep looping on fixing the, can you continue without the test scripts? Okay, so, those are the kind of some of the, they're not exactly errors, but, as the data scientist, you can kind of help guide it writing some of the annoying kind of like parsing stuff. Let's come back here. Did we get a result? Might have been because, again, I left the window. Oh, no. Let's say what other colors? Or maybe can you do all right. I will not leave the window. Let's watch what happens. Interesting. Seems like it just kind of ignored me. Let's come back, and something I want to check. So if I opening the chat as like a document thing is great, but also some of the shortcuts aren't there. That's funny. That's one of the tersest answers I've gotten. Made changes. Well, I didn't see them. What if I... Okay. Well, it seems like it was not... It says it's made changes. Obviously, it hasn't. But, such as working with LLMs. But obviously, you can see that you do have the option to, without having to, like, add a bunch of things to the context over here. When you open it inline like that, it kind of automatically is like, well, obviously the cell we're in is the context, and the notebook we're in is part of the context, and the environment we're in is part of the context. So it's a nice way to like shortcut adding a bunch of stuff directly to the chat window. Is there any other, people have been asking questions as we go. Is there any, like, please throw any other questions or comments in chat. I think I got through most of the stuff I was planning on. Some other interesting things you may run into is sometimes, at least, and again, most of my observations here are related to using GPT-5 Mini with notebooks. I wonder if we, let's try it with a different model. So if I put my cursor in here, I do Control-I. Let's ask GPT-4.1, can you make this histogram have a theme? Seems like no. I'm gonna, especially when I'm working in insiders, if things are just going kind of wonky, pro tip, just reload the window. Sometimes, obviously, when you're working with beta early access stuff, states can get into your code and editor can get into a weird place where it doesn't actually want to. Something's gone wrong. That's a good way to kind of handle that. Also, if you, one other thing about like chat history management, if you click on the history thing there, you can see previous chats. And sometimes it should be that each chat session is, you know, kind of its own silo. But if I'm being paranoid or just starting a new day of work, sometimes I will just kill all of my existing sessions just so that I know I'm starting fresh. And as when you open a new Copilot chat, it mentions here, especially since we're in kind of a lot of data science folks here, if you are handling customer data, you know, by default, vscode has some forms of telemetry turned on, which basically just helps the dev teams, you know, find out are things crashing, what's going wrong. But if you are working with customer data, it's better to be kind of safe on the privacy sort of thing. So you'll want to, you can just, we've got a nice shortcut there for turning off telemetry. So yeah, are there any other chats?
Super job. Super job. Absolutely loved watching this. You're making me want to use Python and Jupyter Notebooks now. So I'm going to go give this one a go, actually.
Awesome.
By looking in the chat, I don't think there's many questions in the chat, but I actually have one myself for you. You touched on custom chat modes, which you're using there. How is your experience being with custom instructions or like an agents MD file with Jupyter Notebooks? Have you managed to use that, or what do you think of that?
I did use, I tried in one project the agents.md for notebooks. I think it was pretty early support for it. So it was kind of hit or miss, but that is a good question. I think I need to come back, and I got kind of went down a rabbit hole, like making all kinds of custom agent modes and things like that. But and you're right, like if you do work with, say, different LLM providers, or if you have colleagues who do, then, you know, putting some of those instructions in agents.md would kind of make them more accessible across different contexts. But if everybody uses VS Code, then and GitHub Copilot, you're good.
Super job. Alrighty, well, we are at the hour mark. That was fantastic to watch. So a massive thank you, Sarah. I think we've got 3 shout outs. We need to talk about the repository. So we're going to flip up the repository for you all to go and grab the code of this workshop. So pretty cool. That's just floating across the bottom of the screen now. And the other two mentions that we have to mention is the data science office hours on Discord and the AI Foundry Discord channel itself, where you can get in contact with us folks at Microsoft. You can talk to us, put your questions in there, tell us what you're stuck on, and just have a little bit of fun. They run all sorts of things in the Discord. So if you want to get involved, go ahead and join that one. Other than that, like, subscribe. If you enjoyed this, shout out and connect with Sarah on LinkedIn and wherever she may be. Awesome stuff.
I'll be the office hours. I actually run the office hours for the data science stuff. So if you want to come hang out, share your projects, talk about some of the stuff, meet me on Discord.
Love stuff. All right, folks. Well, that is the end of today's stream. Catch you in the next one.
Sweet. Bye, everybody.
Bye, all.